Title: Breaking the Chains. Mr. Benson's Struggle. Mr. Benson lived in the big city of Lagos in Nigeria. He used to be a successful businessman with a good life. But Mr. Benson started drinking alcohol and smoking too much. He became addicted and could not stop. His addiction to alcohol and drugs took over his life. It ruined everything good in his life. At first, Mr. Benson just drank and smoked a little at parties with friends. It seemed harmless at the time, but over time, he could not control himself. He needed alcohol and drugs all the time just to feel normal. Without them, he felt awful and could not function. His addiction became the most important thing in his life. Nothing else mattered as much. As Mr. Benson became more addicted, he changed as a person. His wife Mrs. Kazoba and their children saw him become angrier, messier, and unpredictable. The happy family home turned into a place of fights and yelling because of Mr. Benson's problems. Sometimes, he even became violent when using drugs or alcohol. His wife and kids lived in fear of his next outburst. Mr. Benson's work also suffered from his addictions. He made many poor decisions at his job that lost the company a lot of money. His co-workers talked about how much he had changed. The bosses did not trust him anymore because he could not focus or do his work reliably. Out on the streets of Lagos, Mr. Benson looked like a homeless person. His clothes were dirty and torn. He stumbled around, confused and zoned out from drugs or being drunk. People who passed him felt sorry for the tragic side of this once successful man. At his lowest point, alone and in despair, Mr. Benson heard a podcast by Dr. Chisholm about addiction and mental health. Dr. Chisholm's compassionate voice described the horrors of substance abuse in a way that finally reached Mr. Benson. For the first time, Mr. Benson realized he was truly addicted and desperately needed professional help. Hope emerges. Shaking with fear but filled with a tiny bit of hope, Mr. Benson contacted Dr. Chisholm. Through video calls, Mr. Benson opened up about his many years enslaved by addiction. He poured out the painful details of how alcohol, drugs, and mental struggles like OCD, panic attacks, and trauma had taken over his life. Dr. Chisholm listened patiently and without judgment. She recommended her Hope mental health facility for treatment. It was a place that helps people recover from addiction and heal from mental illnesses. Though terrified to go, Mr. Benson knew he was out of options. He bravely entered the Hope mental health facility to begin his journey of recovery. Right away, caring staff surrounded Mr. Benson with kindness and support. The recovery process. For 3 long months, Mr. Benson lived at the facility. Every day, he worked with doctors and therapists in group sessions and one-on-one counseling. It was extremely difficult at first. In therapy, Mr. Benson had to face the trauma from his past that led him to addiction. He had to talk about the pains, fears, and anxieties he had tried to numb with drugs and alcohol. As the therapy dug deeper into his psyche, Mr. Benson confronted heartbreaking childhood issues, toxic relationships, and mistakes that haunted his conscience. Many times he broke down crying in front of the compassionate therapists. But the staff continued supporting and encouraging Mr. Benson each step of the way. They taught him coping tools and life skills for managing stress, anxiety, and cravings in a healthy way. Slowly but surely, Mr. Benson's hopeless mentality started transforming into one of perseverance and optimism. While the psychological counseling healed his mind, Mr. Benson also regained his physical health through. While the psychological counseling healed his mind, Mr. Benson also regained his physical health through nutritious meals, exercise, and carefully monitored medical care at the facility. The staff helped him through the painful process of withdrawing from alcohol and drugs. With their compassionate support, he overcame each difficult phase of detoxing from the substances his body had become dependent on. As the months progressed, Mr. Benson's outlook grew brighter. Group therapy sessions with other residents allowed him to share his struggles and hear others' stories of addiction and recovery. Bonding with peers who understood his battle firsthand created a strong support network. Mr. Benson realized he was not alone in this fight. The facility also offered life skills training and vocational workshops to help residents rebuild a productive lifestyle. Mr. Benson reawakened his passion for entrepreneurship by taking classes on business management and personal finance. Painting classes allowed him to rediscover his creative side. For the first time in years, he found sober joys and healthy ways to cope with stress. A new life. After 3 transformative months, the day came for Mr. Benson to complete his residential program and re-enter normal life. Though he felt apprehensive about leaving the facility's secure environment, he was a changed man, healthier, more self-aware, and committed to his sobriety. When Mr. Benson walked outside on discharge day, an overwhelming scene awaited him. There stood his wife, Mrs. Kazoba, with their children, all beaming with love, relief, and pride. Tears of joy streamed down their faces as the reunited family embraced for the first time in months. In that moment, Mr. Benson understood the tremendous sacrifice his family had made by patiently awaiting this day. He vowed silently to cherish and never take for granted this second chance to be a good husband and father again. On the drive home, Mr. Benson gazed out at the lively streets of Lagos with a fresh outlook of hope and gratitude. The city, which had once witnessed his darkest days, now represented a canvas of new opportunities waiting ahead. Challenges still remained, but Mr. Benson felt unburdened and equipped to rise above them, one day at a time. Over the months after returning home, Mr. Benson diligently applied all the lessons and strategies from rehab in his daily life. When alcohol cravings arose, he utilized distraction techniques like taking a walk or calling his sponsor from the program. Managing stressful situations through deep breathing, meditation, and perspective adjustment became critical tools for maintaining his sobriety. Family healing. Slowly but surely, Mr. Benson regained his family's trust each time he demonstrated his commitment to recovery. Mrs. Kazoba had stood by him through his deepest descent, and she joined him on the upward journey with unconditional love and support. Though scars remained from those dark years, the family learned to practice open communication, vulnerability, and patience with one another. In family therapy sessions, they processed the pain from the past but also celebrated each milestone of healing together in the present. With a clear mind and guidance from his rehab team, Mr. Benson became more attuned to his children's emotional needs that he had neglected during active addiction. He made amends by spending quality time talking, playing games, and sharing laughter and affection. The home environment transformed from a battlefield into a sanctuary of bonding and togetherness. Reviving his career. As his personal life stabilized, Mr. Benson also set goals to revive his professional career. Drawing from his entrepreneurial spirit and business savvy before addiction consumed him, he decided to launch his own small import-export company. Operating with transparency and a commitment to ethical practices, Mr. Benson worked tirelessly to establish the fledgling company. He applied for small business loans and operating with transparency and a commitment to ethical practices and built connections with suppliers abroad. Though startup costs proved challenging after rehab drained his finances, Mr. Benson maintained patience and faith. His perseverance paid off when the business began earning modest but steady profits after the first year. Overcoming doubt from those who expected him to fail, Mr. Benson took immense pride in regaining his professional footing through hard work and determination. He treated employees with respect and led with gratitude for second chances. As the business grew over the next few years, Mr. Benson made counseling and preventative education for addiction challenges a core value. He hosted seminars for staff about mental health resources. He also started a nonprofit fund providing scholarships for treatment to those struggling with substance abuse disorders. Giving back. In addition to his business's philanthropy efforts, Mr. Benson found healing by becoming a volunteer speaker at the very rehab facility where he had found his own path to recovery. By courageously sharing his story, he inspired current residents to keep faith in the program and believe brighter days lie ahead beyond addiction. Mr. Benson spoke candidly about his journey's ups and downs, the agonizing lows of hitting rock bottom, but also the fulfillment of reclaiming his life purpose. His honest words reminded those still in treatment that struggles are inherent in the process, but perseverance leads to freedom. Whenever he could, Mr. Benson also supported good causes in his Lagos community that combated the hazards of substance abuse. He organized neighborhood cleanups to remove litter from abandoned areas where drugs were commonly used and sold. He lobbied local officials to increase funding for addiction prevention education in schools. Life's lessons. Throughout this transformative part of his life's journey, Mr. Benson gathered many profound lessons about human resilience and the ability to rewrite one's story. He learned that selfish choices rooted in addiction could endanger everything he cherished most: his family, career, relationships, and self-respect. But he also discovered that seeking help with humility could unlock a wellspring of inner strength he never knew he possessed. By confronting the roots of his mental health struggles through counseling instead of avoiding them with substance abuse, Mr. Benson gained self-awareness and coping skills to manage stress in a healthy manner. Regular exercise, meditation, and support group meetings became vital routines for maintaining his sobriety over the long term. Most importantly, Mr. Benson's journey taught him about the regenerative power of love, the unconditional love from his family who waited for his return, the tough love from medical professionals who pushed him to keep striving, and the self-love required to shed guilt and shame to embrace his worth. Ongoing recovery. Even years later into his life of recovery, Mr. Benson remains vigilant about prioritizing his sobriety and mental well-being each day. He understands that addiction is a chronic condition requiring continual self-care, so he lives by a refreshed life philosophy rooted in balance, gratitude, and purpose. On difficult days when stressed or facing triggers, Mr. Benson utilizes grounding techniques like focusing on taking deep breaths or reciting affirmations of his core values. He seeks counsel from his support network, which expanded to include both professionals and inspirational friends in recovery who understand his journey intimately. Weekly attendance at a community support group remains a non-negotiable ritual for Mr. Benson. Listening to others share their experiences and offering his own insights creates accountability. It's a reminder that no one is alone in battling the obsession of addiction that could easily resurface with complacency. Most importantly, Mr. Benson never takes his loving family for granted again. He establishes regular date nights with his devoted wife and schedules quality time with his children who inspire him to keep growing. The laughter, adventures, and special moments as a reunited family provide the greatest motivation to remain free from addiction's grip. While the specter of his rock bottom still looms as a visceral memory, it no longer casts the long shadow it once did over Mr. Benson's life. By courageously breaking the chains of substance abuse through inner resolve, counseling, and family support, he recovered his sense of purpose and hope for the future. A living example. These days, Mr. Benson's personal transformation sets a powerful example for others fighting to overcome their own battles with addiction and mental health challenges. His story demonstrates that no person is too far gone or too defined by their past mistakes. With the right support system and mindset, healing and redemption are attainable. Many people in Mr. Benson's life have witnessed his incredible evolution from his darkest days of suffering to reclaiming his life's potential. His colleagues and business associates, once skeptical about his ability to rebound, now look on with admiration at his resilience and entrepreneurial success. Neighbors who watched his tragic devolution into homelessness now greet him warmly as a community leader making positive impacts. Most profoundly impacted have been Mr. Benson's own family members who stayed by his side through the turmoil and anguish of addiction's fallout. After fearing they had lost their beloved husband and father to alcohol and drugs forever, Mrs. Kazoba and the children now swell with immense pride to witness Mr. Benson's total rebirth of spirit and character. His consistent commitment to personal growth has restored their faith in his inner fortitude. For Mr. Benson's younger relatives grappling with the harsh realities of growing up in an environment where substance abuse is prevalent, his transformation provides visible hope that a better path forward is achievable. They have seen his living embodiment that breaking the cycle of addiction is possible, even from life's lowest depths, through perseverance and self-love. An ongoing mission. Despite the tremendous strides he has made, Mr. Benson recognizes that his life's mission to raise awareness around addiction recovery is still a work in progress. As someone who has faced down the harsh stigmas surrounding substance use disorders, he feels a profound responsibility to keep advocating for improved resources and more compassionate perspectives. Whenever he can, Mr. Benson leverages his influential standing in the business community to promote initiatives supporting those affected by addiction's far-reaching impacts. He partners with organizations offering job training, transitional housing, child care assistance, and other vital services to help families regain stability and self-sufficiency during the recovery process. Through mentorship programs, Mr. Benson is also working to inspire the next generation of youth to pursue their ambitions without succumbing to the lure of using drugs or alcohol to cope with life's obstacles. By sharing his cautionary tale combined with empowering messages of perseverance, he aims to dismantle the dangerous misperception that addiction could never happen to them. Furthermore, Mr. Benson lends his respected voice to lobbying government officials and policymakers on legislation related to addiction treatment and prevention. Drawing from his first-hand experience navigating recovery's challenges, he passionately advocates for improved access, affordability, and quality of professional rehabilitation services across socioeconomic boundaries. Looking back on his long road from entrenched in the grips of addiction to now standing as a pillar of perseverance in his community, Mr. Benson carries an immense sense of gratitude. His perspective has been reframed to see each day as a gift, an opportunity to keep nurturing his sobriety while leaving positive impacts on the world around him. The descent into alcoholism and substance abuse that once engulfed every aspect of Mr. Benson's existence could have prematurely ended his story in tragic loneliness and despair. However, by summoning profound courage and striving for personal redemption through recovery, he rewrote his life's narrative into one of hope, love, and fulfilled potential. While the demons of addiction's temptation may always linger, Mr. Benson has reclaimed the power to keep them at bay through unwavering self-care, support systems, and life purpose. His inspiring transformation shines as a beacon of possibility for others battling the darkness, proof that no person is too lost to find their way towards redemption's light. The long road to recovery. For Mr. Benson, the journey from the depths of addiction's grip back to sobriety and stability was an arduous, emotionally grueling process filled with pivotal moments that tested his resolve. However, each incremental step forward reinvigorated his determination to regain control of his life. It began with the pivotal intervention from Dr. Chisholm, whose compassionate words during a podcast describing addiction's catastrophic tolls finally penetrated the dense fog of denial clouding Mr. Benson's psyche. In that watershed moment of clarity, he realized he could no longer sidestep or rationalize the harsh realities of how alcohol and substance abuse had corroded his existence. Invited by an international television organization who saw his speech online and all he has been doing for his community, invited him abroad. A date was fixed as he arranged himself and planned towards the date in 3 weeks. Mr. Benson answering questions and talking in the TV station, his heart pounding with a mixture of nervousness and excitement. It had been a long and difficult journey, but here he was, ready to share his story of redemption with the viewers at home. As he looked out at the faces before him, Mr. Benson's mind drifted back to the darkest days of his life, the days when addiction had consumed him, tearing apart his family and leaving him broken and alone. But thanks to the love and support of his wife, Kazoba, and the professionals at the mental health rehabilitation facility, Mr. Benson had emerged from the shadows, a changed man. Taking a deep breath, Mr. Benson began to speak, his words flowing freely as he recounted his struggles with addiction and mental illness. He spoke of the despair and hopelessness that had plagued him, of the battles he had fought and the victories he had won. And he spoke of the light that had finally broken through the darkness, leading him to a path of healing and redemption. As he spoke, Mr. Benson could feel the weight of his burden lifting, replaced by a sense of purpose and joy. It was a joy that he was determined to share with others, to let them know that no matter how deep the darkness, there was always hope for a brighter tomorrow. In addition to speaking at the international TV station, Mr. Benson had also found a new passion for writing. He poured his heart and soul into books about mental health, sharing his own experiences and insights in the hope of helping others who were struggling. And thanks to the support of generous donors, Mr. Benson's books were made available online and offline for free, reaching people all over the world. But perhaps the greatest gift of all was the opportunity to repay his wife, Kazoba, for her unwavering love and support during his darkest hours. With his newfound stability and financial security, Mr. Benson whisked Kazoba and their children away on vacations abroad, creating memories that would last a lifetime. As they explored new places and experienced new cultures together, Mr. Benson felt a deep sense of gratitude for the second chance he had been given. He vowed to live each day to the fullest, cherishing the precious moments with his family and spreading hope and positivity wherever he went. And so, as Mr. Benson stood before all his family members, his heart overflowing with gratitude and joy, he knew that he was living a life truly worth celebrating. For he had emerged from the depths of despair to embrace the light of hope, and in doing so, had found a happiness beyond measure. The end.